Have you ever felt that sensation of walking into your home and, instead of peace, finding an avalanche of objects screaming for your attention? That piece of clothing you haven't worn in years, drawers that barely close, cabinets overflowing with things that might be useful someday. And then, without realizing it, this external clutter begins to invade your mind. Your thoughts become as crowded as the spaces around you. Mental clarity gets lost among piles of forgotten objects. This is the reality for many of us, living amidst excess without realizing how it silently steals our peace. But there is another way, one that finds richness in simplicity and power in absence, a path that transforms not only our homes, but our minds and hearts. When we observe the tradition of simplicity that flourishes in traditional Japanese homes, we find more than just a decorating style. We find a philosophy of life, an approach that teaches us that every object should have a purpose, every space should breathe, and that emptiness is not absence, but the presence of infinite possibilities. Today I'm going to share with you how this ancient wisdom can transform suffocated environments into sanctuaries of peace. How small changes in your physical space can trigger profound transformations in your inner life, and why this path of simplicity is, in fact, the path to a richer and more fulfilling life. It all starts with a simple question. What would happen if you learned to value the space between things as much as the things themselves? Imagine walking into a room where every object has been chosen with intention. Nothing is there by chance or unconscious accumulation. The eye can rest without being bombarded by constant visual stimuli. The feet can move without obstacles. The mind can relax without the constant reminder of unfinished tasks represented by objects out of place. This feeling is not just aesthetic, it's deeply therapeutic. Studies show that organized and simplified environments reduce cortisol levels, the stress hormone. In other words, external simplicity creates space for internal calm. The principles that guide this approach are surprisingly simple, but revolutionary when applied. The first is awareness of what we really need versus what we accumulate out of habit or insecurity. Often, our spaces are filled not because we need so many things, but because we fear scarcity, or because we associate possessions with security and success. When we begin to observe our relationship with objects, we notice fascinating patterns. That drawer full of just-in-case items reflects our difficulty in trusting the future. Closets overflowing with clothes we don't wear reveal our past or aspirational identities that we don't want to let go of. Surfaces covered with decorations may be attempts to fill emotional voids with physical presences. The transformation process begins not with big dramatic changes, but with small acts of awareness. Observe a space in your home that always seems chaotic. Perhaps it's the desk, the kitchen counter, or the nightstand. Instead of simply organizing the objects, question the presence of each one. Why is it there? What purpose does it serve? Does it bring clarity or confusion to your life? In traditional Japanese homes, there is the concept of functional space that breathes. Each area has a clear purpose, and objects are selected not only for their utility, but for how they interact with the space around them. A vase is not just a container for flowers. It's a point of contemplation, an expression of temporality and beauty that converses with the emptiness around it. Bringing this wisdom into our reality, we can begin to see our homes not as warehouses of possessions, but as living environments that influence our well-being. Each decision about what to keep, what to discard, and how to organize becomes a conscious choice about the kind of life we want to cultivate. The beauty of this approach lies in its gentleness. It's not about throwing everything away in a purist impulse, but about cultivating a more conscious relationship with our possessions. When something new enters our lives, it's not just another item in the pile. It's a deliberate choice that reflects our values and real needs. Imagine now your morning routine. In an overloaded environment, you wake up and immediately your gaze encounters dozens of objects that demand your attention. Yesterday's clothes on the chair, papers scattered around, products accumulated on the bathroom sink. Before you even start the day, your mind is already fragmented, trying to process all this visual noise. Now imagine the same routine in a simplified space. You wake up and find a room where each item has its designated place. The surface of the table contains only a simple plant, and perhaps a book you are currently reading. The bathroom has only the products you really use daily, organized with intention. The clothes are stored in a way that you can easily see and access each piece. This external clarity immediately translates into internal clarity. Your mind doesn't need to constantly filter unnecessary visual information. Instead, it can focus on the present moment, on the sensations of the body upon awakening, on the light entering through the window, on the breath that flows naturally. This is the transformative power of minimalism. Inspired by the Japanese tradition, it creates space not only in our homes, but in our minds. And when our mind finds this space to breathe, we discover a renewed capacity for presence and appreciation. One of the most beautiful principles of this philosophy is the value attributed to imperfect and authentic things. Instead of seeking the polished and artificial perfection that we see in decorating magazines, we learn to value natural beauty, the signs of use, the patina that time confers on objects. A wooden table with marks of use tells stories of shared meals and lived moments. A natural fabric with its irregular texture brings a tactile sensation that synthetic materials cannot replicate. Even a wall with small imperfections can be seen not as a problem to be fixed, but as a reminder of the authenticity and imperfect nature of life. This acceptance of imperfection has a profoundly liberating effect. When we stop seeking illusory perfection in our spaces, we also begin to let go of the need for perfection in our lives. We accept that just as a repaired ceramic can be more beautiful for its cracks, our own breakages and repairs are part of what makes us unique and valuable. The organization of spaces, according to this philosophy, follows simple but profound principles. The first is that each object should have a designated place, not hidden in boxes or drawers where it will be forgotten, but intentionally positioned. This not only makes it easier to find what we need, but also makes us more aware of what we actually own. The second principle is the appreciation of empty space. Unlike the Western tendency to fill every available inch, we learn to see emptiness not as something to be filled, but as an essential element of design. Walls don't need to be covered with pictures. Shelves don't need to be full. Surfaces don't need to be occupied. Empty space creates visual and mental breathing room. The third principle is attention to simple details. A minimalist arrangement with a few branches in a simple vase can bring more beauty and meaning than an elaborate decoration. Natural light flowing through a window without heavy curtains creates patterns that change throughout the day, reminding us of the transient nature of life. When we begin to apply these principles, something incredible happens. Our homes begin to give us energy back instead of draining it. Instead of entering an environment that constantly demands our attention for organization and maintenance, we enter a space that nourishes and restores us. Think about the different rooms in your house and how each of them could be transformed by these principles. The kitchen, for example, is a space where accumulation happens easily. Utensils that we use once a year occupy the same space as those we use daily. Appliances acquired in moments of enthusiasm consume precious space on the counters. Transforming the kitchen according to this philosophy means keeping in sight and within reach only what you use regularly. It means creating clean workspaces where preparing food becomes an act of presence and not of chaos. It means valuing quality utensils that last for decades instead of accumulating disposable items. In the bedroom, the challenge is to create an environment that truly promotes rest and renewal. This means freeing the space from electronics, work papers, and other reminders of obligations. It means reducing the wardrobe to those pieces that we actually use and that reflect who we are today, not who we were or who we aspire to be in some hypothetical future. A simplified wardrobe not only frees up physical space, but also eliminates decision fatigue, that mental weariness we feel when faced with too many choices first thing in the morning. When every piece in your closet is something you really like, and that serves your current purpose, getting dressed becomes an act of affirmation instead of confusion. The living room, traditionally a space for socializing, often becomes a repository of passive entertainment. Multiple screens, stacks of magazines, and decorations accumulated over the years compete for our attention. Transforming this space means asking, what really facilitates connection here? What creates an environment where conversations flow naturally, where genuine rest is possible? Perhaps this means removing the television from the center of the room, creating instead a seating arrangement that facilitates eye contact and conversation. Perhaps it means replacing dozens of decorative objects with a few meaningful items that tell your personal story or inspire contemplation. The bathroom, often the smallest room in the house, frequently houses the largest amount of products per square foot. Transforming it according to this philosophy means questioning the industry that convinces us that we need specific products for every part of the body and every situation. It means choosing multifunctional items, preferably with natural ingredients and sustainable packaging. A simplified bathroom becomes a space of ritual and renewal, not just of pragmatic functions. The absence of dozens of products competing for space creates a spa-like feeling, an invitation to slow down and treat moments of personal hygiene as opportunities for conscious self-care. Even utilitarian spaces like the laundry room and pantry can be transformed by these principles. Instead of stocking cleaning products and food beyond what is necessary, often leading to waste, we can create simple systems where we clearly see what we have and use each item before replacing it. The process of transforming our spaces does not happen overnight. It's a journey, not a one-time total cleaning event. It starts with small areas, a drawer, a shelf, a surface, and gradually expands as we internalize the principles and experience their benefits. A practical approach is to start with what the eyes encounter first when entering a room. These first impressions set the tone for how we feel in the space. Cleaning and simplifying these focal points creates an immediate sense of calm that inspires us to continue the process. Another effective technique is the daily practice of putting back, dedicating a few minutes at the end of the day to return each object to its designated place. This not only keeps the space organized, but also creates a closing ritual that signals to the mind that the day is complete. As we progress on this journey, many of us encounter internal resistance. Letting go of things can awaken deep fears of scarcity or anxieties about the future. Objects linked to memories or loved ones may seem impossible to discard without feeling that we are betraying those connections. It's important to approach these resistances with gentleness and understanding. The goal is not to create perfect magazine spaces, but environments that support us in the life we want to live today. Sometimes this means keeping an object purely for its sentimental value, even if it is not useful in the conventional sense. The difference lies in awareness. Keeping something by deliberate choice is different from keeping it out of inertia or fear. When we consciously choose the few sentimental objects that really matter, we can honor them by giving them space and attention, instead of leaving them lost amidst the clutter. An often neglected aspect of this philosophy is how it transforms our relationship with consumption. When our spaces are carefully curated, impulsive buying loses its appeal. We begin to ask ourselves, does this new item deserve space in my home? Does it align with who I am and what I value? This extended awareness to consumption has benefits that go far beyond domestic organization. We reduce our environmental impact, save financial resources, and free ourselves from the cycle of working more to buy more, only to need more space to store more things. Instead, we begin to invest in experiences, in relationships, in personal development, areas that studies consistently show to be more correlated with lasting happiness than the acquisition of material goods. This shift in value, from things to experiences, from accumulation to presence, is perhaps the most profoundly transformative aspect of this philosophy. It reconnects us with a wisdom that many traditional cultures have always known. True wealth is not in what we own, but in how we live. Daily routines take on a different quality when practiced in simplified spaces. The morning ritual of preparing tea becomes a moment of presence when the counter is free of clutter, and each necessary element has its specific place. Cleaning is no longer an endless task, but an act of caring for the space that shelters us. Many people find that, as their physical spaces become more orderly, their minds naturally follow the same path. Intrusive thoughts decrease, the ability to concentrate increases, and a general sense of clarity emerges. This clarity often extends to other areas of life. Relationships that drain energy without offering real value are re-evaluated. Commitments made out of obligation rather than purpose are questioned. Just as we learn to say no to objects that no longer serve our purpose, we begin to establish healthy boundaries in other aspects of life. It's fascinating to observe how external and internal simplicity feed each other. A closet organized by clear categories reflects and reinforces a mind that can categorize and prioritize tasks efficiently. A space free of visual distractions supports a mind capable of focusing on what really matters. Perhaps one of the most significant benefits of this approach is the rediscovery of contentment. In a culture that constantly bombards us with messages that we need more, better, newer to be happy, deliberate simplicity is a radical act of self-affirmation. By saying this is enough to our possessions, we are actually saying something much deeper. I am enough. I don't need expensive brands or the latest trend to validate my worth. I don't need to fill every empty space in my house or my schedule to feel that my life has meaning. This sense of sufficiency is profoundly liberating. It's like finally releasing a heavy backpack that we've been carrying for so long that we forgot it was there. Suddenly there's more energy available for what really matters: creating, connecting, contemplating, contributing. Homes transformed by these principles have a distinctive quality that transcends style or trend. They convey a sense of intentionality. Each object, each arrangement, reflects a conscious choice, not an accidental accumulation. This intentionality creates a palpable atmosphere that visitors perceive immediately, even without understanding its origin. Have you ever entered a space and instantly felt your shoulders relax, your breathing deepen? This is the body's natural response to an environment where intention overcomes chaos, where purpose overcomes accumulation. This feeling is what many seek in retreats, spas, and expensive vacation destinations, without realizing that we can create that same quality in our own daily homes. Not through expensive acquisitions or extensive renovations, but through careful subtraction and conscious attention. The process of transformation is not just about removing excess, but also about carefully curating what remains. This means developing a deeper appreciation for common objects that we use daily. The teacup that fits perfectly in your hand, the well-balanced knife that makes food preparation easier, the comfortable chair that supports long conversations, these are not just functional items, but companions on life's journey. This appreciation for everyday objects brings us back to the present moment, where life really happens. Instead of constantly longing for the next upgrade or the next acquisition, we find satisfaction in what we already have. This is true gratitude, not a forced exercise, but a natural recognition of the inherent value in simple things. The gratitude that emerges from this practice is substantially different from the superficial gratitude often promoted in self-help books. It's not a checklist of things we should feel grateful for, but a visceral sense of appreciation that arises naturally when we stop taking things for granted. When we clear the excess, what really matters becomes more visible. Meaningful relationships, moments of beauty, small daily joys, all these essential aspects of life are often obscured by the constant pursuit of more. By simplifying, we reveal what's already there, waiting for our attention. A common concern when people consider this approach is the fear of creating sterile or impersonal spaces. I don't want to live in a museum, they say. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the philosophy. The goal is not austerity, but authenticity. A space truly aligned with these principles reflects the character and values of those who inhabit it. It may contain much-loved books, musical instruments that are used regularly, art that resonates deeply, objects that tell meaningful stories. What it doesn't contain are the layers of unconscious accumulation that obscure these genuine expressions of identity. In fact, it is precisely when we remove the excess that our true personality can shine. A meaningful object placed against a simple background has much more impact than when lost amidst clutter. Our authentic voice becomes audible when it's not competing with the noise of the unnecessary. As we advance on this journey, many of us discover that the process of external simplification facilitates a corresponding internal simplification. We begin to recognize and release not only physical possessions that no longer serve us, but also thoughts, beliefs, and emotional patterns that limit us. Just as we learn to discern between objects that deserve space in our homes and those that don't, we develop a more refined discernment about which thoughts deserve space in our minds. Irrelevant worries, ruminations about the past, anxieties about the future, all these mental excesses can be gently recognized and released. The result is a mental clarity that many describe as revolutionary. Decisions that once seemed oppressively complex become simpler when the mind is not overwhelmed. Creativity flows more freely when it's not constrained by mental clutter. Subtle intuitions become audible when they're not muffled by internal noise. This state of clarity allows us to be more fully present for the people in our lives. When we're not constantly distracted by external and internal clutter, we can offer a quality of attention that is one of the greatest gifts we can give someone. The beauty of this philosophy is that it's available to everyone, regardless of financial or housing circumstances. It doesn't require expensive purchases or large homes. In fact, some of the most inspiring spaces are created with limited resources, where necessity sharpens creativity and intentionality. A small apartment can perfectly embody these principles, perhaps even more easily than a large house, as limited space naturally forces us to be selective. A tight budget can be a blessing in disguise, as it protects us from the temptation to solve design problems through consumption rather than creativity. As more people awaken to the benefits of this approach, supportive communities are emerging. People share their journeys, celebrate progress, offer encouragement during moments of doubt. There's a growing recognition that, in an era of unprecedented excess, choosing simplicity is an act of courage and self-determination. This journey of transformation doesn't have a definitive endpoint. There's no moment when we can say, "Done, now my house is perfect and I never need to think about it again." Instead, it's an ongoing and evolving relationship with our spaces and possessions. The seasons change, our needs change, our circumstances change. The beauty of this approach is its flexibility. It's not a rigid set of rules, but a set of principles that can be adapted to different phases of life. A young family with small children will apply these principles differently from a retired couple. A person in career transition will have different spatial needs from someone in a stable routine. The important thing is not to achieve some abstract ideal of perfection, but to create environments that genuinely support the life we are living now. However, the core of the philosophy remains constant. The belief that our external spaces and our internal states are deeply interconnected, that simplicity nurtures clarity, and that there is profound freedom in owning less. When we look back at human history, we see that this wisdom is not new. Spiritual and philosophical traditions from around the world have long recognized the dangers of excessive attachment to material possessions and the benefits of a simpler, more intentional life. What is perhaps unique to our time is the urgency of this message. In an era of unprecedented consumption, accelerating climate change, and growing awareness of the hidden costs of our materialistic habits, choosing simplicity is not just an aesthetic preference or a spiritual practice. It's a rational response to real challenges. Every time we choose not to buy something unnecessary, every time we repair instead of replace, every time we find joy in experiences instead of possessions, we are not only creating more serene homes, but contributing to a more sustainable world. At the end of this journey, what we discover is that true minimalism inspired by Japanese tradition is not about deprivation. It's about freedom. Freedom from the burden of excess. Freedom from the constant pressure to have more. Freedom to focus on what truly brings meaning and joy. And perhaps the greatest revelation is this: the empty spaces we create are not empty at all. They are filled with potential, with possibility, with peace. When we let go of what we don't need, we discover that we already have what we've always been looking for, the ability to be truly present for our own lives. This presence is the true treasure. In a world that constantly pulls us in 1,000 directions, that bombards us with information and stimuli, the ability to fully inhabit the present moment is increasingly rare and precious. Our simplified homes become sanctuaries where this presence can flourish, where we can hear the silence, feel the natural rhythm of the day, reconnect with our own internal rhythms, where we can finally let go of the constant striving and simply be. And in that being, we discover a fullness that no amount of possessions could provide. A sense of coming home not just to a physical space, but to ourselves. A peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances, but that emanates from within. This is the invitation that this philosophy extends to us, to transform our spaces not just so they look better, but so we can live better, to create homes that not only house our bodies but nurture our souls. To discover that, paradoxically, it is in the empty space that we find the greatest fullness. The path begins with a single step, a single object released, a single space cleared, a single conscious decision. And from that humble beginning, whole worlds of possibility open up. Are you ready to take that step? The silence that transforms. How empty spaces create full lives. Share this blessed video so that it can touch and help other people like you and me. Don't forget to click the subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you very much from the bottom of my heart for being part of our faith community. If you would like to support our channel a little more, consider becoming a member of our channel. I leave here 2 more videos so that you can continue your search. Thank you and God bless everyone. See you later.